Sunsara Taylor. She's an organizer with Refuse Fascism. Sunsara, thanks for joining us. So I was reading your manifesto tonight, and you said this: the Trump regime is a fascist regime, no insult or exaggeration, that's what it is. For the future of humanity and the planet, we the people must drive this regime out. So I'm assuming you're not a moderate necessarily, but the obvious question arises, which is, if it's a fascist regime, how are you on this show?
Look, Donald, we're facing an emergency. Humanity is facing an emergency. A fascist regime has seized the reins of power in the most powerful, actually the sole superpower in the world. Trump and Pence are operating out of Hitler's playbook, only they have nuclear weapons. And what refusefascism.org is saying to the world is that while it's beautiful, it's righteous that millions of people have stood up in protest and continue to do so. And by the way, since I know he sometimes watches, President Trump, if you're watching, way more people have protested than were at your Nazi inauguration. But while this is beautiful, this resistance needs to grow, and people need to confront that this is a fascist regime. They could drop the hammer and close down. It's working aggressively to close down the space for people to stand up and resist. And so in the name of humanity, 7 billion on this planet, we need to pour into the streets and say no. We refuse to accept a fascist America. We refuse to accept this for the world, and we must drive them out. We need to stay in the streets.
I mean, so many questions come to mind, but the obvious one is this. I always thought that the day somebody got up, a Republican, and said, you know what, we got to focus on jobs, no more pointless wars in the Middle East, and by the way, I'm a secular guy, they would say, you know, it's kind of my kind of Republican. You know, I mean,
a man who campaigned and said, I long for the days when protesters were dragged out on stretchers, who offered to pay the bills of people who assaulted protesters at his rally. Donald Trump is a fascist. That's out of Hitler's playbook. This is a danger to humanity. And yes, it's in its early stages, but people need to rise up and stop it before it is too late.
Okay, so, but I want to get to that. Rise up and stop it. So I'm assuming that, I mean, you're not serious. I mean, this is like play acting for you. If you really thought he was Hitler, if you really believed that he was acting according to, as you said, the playbook of Hitler, then you wouldn't stop with going on a cable show. I mean, you'd go all the way, wouldn't you? I mean, you don't really think that, or you'd be committing acts of violence, right?
I absolutely think. Actually, he's not like Hitler. He has a Twitter feed, he has that ugly orange thing on top of his head, and he has nuclear weapons, the biggest nuclear arsenal in the world. And people better wake up, because he is more dangerous than Hitler ever could have been.
But I mean, let's just be real for a second. I know we're on TV, but let's be real. If you really thought that...
Hold on. You implied something, and I want to answer it. You implied that I'm going to do something that's untoward, whatever. I'm calling for mass political protest and resistance, building on what's happened and staying in the streets in the name of humanity. Before the man starts, he asked 3 times, if I have nukes, why can't I use them?
No, I can
this
see
is the mass incineration of human beings on an industrial scale.
I can see that you're spun
against
up here.
Humanity.
But let's just be more specific, because I want to take you seriously. I assume you're being serious, hard as it is to believe, when you use rhetoric like he's Hitler, he's going to incinerate the world.
No, I said nuclear weapons are the mass incineration of human beings on an industrial scale. Oh, sure.
You think he could destroy the world?
Nukes are no big deal for you. I know you like to carry water for the liar-in-chief. I know you like to justify and rationalize the sexual predator-in-chief. But I don't think this is a joke. This is for humanity, and he is dangerous.
But what are you going to do about it, Sunsara? That's my question. Other than, like, jump around in the street with a sign in your hand, okay, no, and write your little manifesto.
Refusefascism.org has a manifesto. As you said, refusefascism.org, we say we have 4 things people should do. They should manifest the no. They should protest every outrage and crime. But we have to have a single unifying objective. And the people who are waking up in this country, who are horrified by this man with his finger on the nuclear weapon, we need to recognize that he has to be driven from office through mass political resistance before it is too late. Fascism advances through stages. Shock, awe, violence, and then periods of normalization.
Fascism with political resistance, but whatever, you may not know
that. It would have taken millions and millions to rise up to stop Hitler. It absolutely would have.
But what do you
and it's what people should have done.
Okay,
and it is shameful. It is shameful for you to dismiss this.
But hold on, I know it's shameful, but let me ask you this.
It's funny to you.
Question. So the
no, because I know you love to carry water for this criminal, this war criminal wannabe in chief.
Right.
He's itching.
But hold on.
You find that as petty matter?
There were 62...
Tucker, you find that petty? You find that a petty concern that he wants to...
I know that you're very petty, but I'm trying to ask you a real question.
Nuclear weapons are as serious as you can be.
I just want to ask you... Okay. Well, let me ask you one last question, okay? 62 million people voted for Trump, and disproportionately they were people at the lower end of the income scale. They were actually. They were middle class and below, mostly. opposed to Trump were, I don't know, the hedge fund managers and privileged people like you. Did you ever think to yourself, like, why is the middle class?
He lost the popular vote. He lost the popular vote, and no election, fair or fraudulent, no election, fair or fraudulent, can justify ripping up the rule of law, undermining the courts, threatening and shutting down the press.
You're saying that you should throw a duly elected president out of office.
No, I'm saying people should resist.
Law.
Yes, that's what he means when he says so-called judge. That's what he means when he fires an attorney general who disagrees with his laws.
What I want to do is get to how you think.
What you want to do is normalize fascism. Right. What you want to do is try to caricature and dismiss people who are telling the truth.
For me. Thanks, though. Tried.